Today on Factions Compared, we examine dropships. Hey guys, this is Eckhart's Letter. Hello and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Factions Compared. Today we will be examining the dropships of the Galactic Empire, Rebel Alliance, Confederacy of Independent Systems, and Galactic Republic in order to determine which one had the best dropship. Dropships will include anything which has the purpose, among other things, to deploy troops. It can also be a gunship. We'll look at each case individually. Starting first with the Empire, we do have a few options. We could use something basic like the Lambda class shuttle, or perhaps the Empire's version of the LAAT gunship, but I think the closest thing to the other ships on this list is the Imperial patrol transport. The patrol transport was actually a Republic-era vehicle, which we first saw in the Clone Wars, but Star Wars Rebels showed us that the Empire is now using a modified version of that ship. At just under 12 meters, the ship seems to be more focused on speed and quick response, which makes sense given it was often used by police forces. Still, it was armed, and the Imperial version especially seemed to carry with it a decent amount of firepower for its size. We see the ship has two LAAT-style ball guns underneath its cockpit, as well as a rear gunner. In addition, in Star Wars Rebels, we also see that the patrol transport makes use of missile launchers. Still, it is a weird ship for any sort of real heavy combat, which again I think points back to its initial use by police. It's not heavy or large enough to actually focus on transporting and bringing troops into battle, and it doesn't have the weaponry to act as a true gunship. It can operate as a quick response unit, but I do think its overall usefulness is somewhat limited. Next we have the Galactic Republic, and one of my favorite vehicles in the Star Wars universe, the LAAT gunship. The low altitude assault transport was a gunship dropship hybrid used by the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. It's featured heavily not only in the main movies, including the Battle of Geonosis, but also the Star Wars Clone Wars TV show. As we see in both mediums, besides being able to transport at least 24 clones, the LAAT is capable of dishing out an extreme amount of damage. First we have 3 laser turrets, and these are extremely similar to those on the Imperial troop transport and are generally used against ground-based targets. Alongside that, we also have 4 composite beam laser turrets, 2 which are manned by live clones, and these can be used to take down both personnel and vehicles. The LAAT also had 2 sets of air-to-air missiles, one on each one of its wings, which typically would have focused on other repulsor lift vehicles or atmospheric-based starfighters. Finally, the craft had 2 mass driver-based missile launchers, which could be fitted with a variety of ordnance. All in all, the LAAT has an almost obscene amount of firepower given it is, again, primarily a troop transport. The LAAT is also fairly fast, especially for its relatively bulky size, and is great at picking up units in hot zones. The LAAT isn't without issues, however. The first would be a lack of shields. First, shields in the Star Wars universe help vehicles negate air resistance, thus allowing them to achieve higher speeds. There's obvious benefits behind an even faster gunship. There's also the fact that a shield would give the LAAT extra durability, something that would be important again when picking up soldiers in hot zones or acting as a primary gunship. LAATs can be specialized with different weapons or searchlights, however it would have been nice to see one with extra heavy armor. Still, it's a very versatile craft capable of not only attacking targets, but also delivering persons and vehicles, something that I didn't mention earlier. Next we have the Confederacy of Independent Systems and their heavy missile platform droid gunship, sometimes just called the droid gunship or the HMP. The fact that the HMP delivers droids gives it a unique advantage. A large amount of droids can be fit into an extremely compact space. Thus, although the HMP is 5 meters shorter than the 17-meter long LAAT gunship, it doesn't lose out on any space for weapons. I'll get back to that in a second, but not only does the ship not lose weapons, but it seems to gain extra armor and notably shielding. This durability makes, in my opinion, the HMP the most effective gunship on this list. Speaking of guns, weaponry-wise, the HMP is also fully loaded. It makes use of 2 very heavy-looking turreted laser cannons at the front of the ship, which, like many of the weapons on the LAAT, can rotate independently and track multiple targets. The ship also has a chin-mounted laser cannon and wing-mounted light laser cannons meant for taking out faraway targets. However, the majority of the firepower for the HMP comes from the dozens of interchangeable missiles loaded within each one of the ship's wings. The ship can be configured to take on other repulsor lift vehicles, hard ground-based targets, or even infantry at ease. The HMP's ability to quickly deploy troops is also, in my opinion, unmatched. largely because the troops that it's deploying are droids. We see in the Clone Wars TV show that the gunship simply drops into battle with the droids slung underneath it, letting them go, and then flying away. All in all, the HMP is an incredibly designed vehicle when you take into consideration the specific needs of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Finally, for the Rebel Alliance, we have the UT-60D, commonly known as the Ewing. The Ewing was one of the Rebels' rarest ships and often served a variety of roles, from dropships to medevac to gunship to basically everything in between. However, in my mind, the Ewing only really serves one of these functions well: transport. The ship is chronically underarmed when compared to the other ships on this list. The Ewing itself only has one set of double laser cannons, however infantry would also bring their own heavy weapons, which could be fired out the doors. The lack of missiles or other explosives really puts it behind the other ships on this list when operating in a gunship capacity. However, as I said, the Ewing was a good transport ship. The ship appears to have a relatively heavy hull and does possess shielding. This meant that it could take a lot of damage even when it had to get to a planet from space. Its S-foils could also be operated in two positions, and especially in flight mode, it was likely the fastest ship on this list. However, due to its extended wings, it does have a large target profile and isn't exactly maneuverable. It also carries only around a dozen troops, thus somewhat missing out on the benefits of its transport capabilities. I do think, however, that the ship makes sense when used as it was in Rogue One, delivering a small fire team to a hot target. Still, I do wish it did have a bit more weaponry, and even something like missile launchers I think would go a long way to making the ship more viable for combat. With all of that out of the way, let's now rank these ships from best to worst. And I did say that we're ranking them as dropships, but I will still consider their offensive potential. Coming in at number 1 is the Hmp Droid Gunship. Some of you have been saying that I'm hating on the Separatists. They've had a few 4th place finishes recently, but I'm really not. This ship exemplifies everything good about a droid army. Droids are extremely easy to transport. You just fold them up, drop them off, you don't need to worry about oxygen or anything like that. The Hmp is thus able to operate fully as a gunship while also dropping off troops. Admittedly, the weapons of the Hmp may not be as heavy as the LAATs, however I think it makes up for that due to its extra shielding and its likely thicker hull. The Hmp is clearly the best gunship on this list, and I think likely one of the best transports. It can drop troops off at an alarmingly quick speed. In Star Wars Legends at least, having that deflector shield also allows it to fly at extremely fast speeds. I'm talking thousands of miles per hour. That's a big advantage over the other ships on this list with the exception of the U-Wing. Coming in at number 2 is the LAAT gunship, and this vehicle is packed to the brim with explosives, and I love that. But it does have some issues when compared with the droid gunship. It is somewhat fragile. I wish it did have a shield, but I do like that it has a large troop capacity and can be used to quickly drop off or rescue troops in the heat of battle. The ship, like the Hmp, also is heavily configurable, which I do like. I just wish there was a bit more focus on armor, even if that meant a little less speed. It doesn't make sense to skew the vessel so heavily towards a gunship, but not put some shielding on it. Coming in at number 3 is the U-Wing, which is pretty crappy at being a gunship, but pretty good at being a specialized transport. I say specialized because it doesn't have the kind of troop capacity that I would really like to see on a ship of that size and doesn't have the weapons to do much else, but I think Rogue One really exemplifies just how useful the U-Wing can be. It's also one of the only 2 shielded vehicles on this list, and it does seem to be relatively sturdy, which again, I think helps it out. The worst of the gunships / dropships on this list is, in my opinion, the Republic Police Gunship. Now, this is a relatively specialized vehicle. It's meant more for search and rescue or use by police forces, so perhaps it is unfair to include it on this list. That being said, it looks absolutely fragile, and it's not very large, can't bring a whole lot of troops anywhere, and although it does have those 2 missile launchers, doesn't have a whole lot of firepower at its whim. It doesn't do gunship as well as the LAAT or the Hmp, and it doesn't do transport as well as the U-Wing. That, however, is just my opinion. To summarize, I think the list goes like this: Hmp, LAAT gunship, U-Wing, and then Imperial troop transport. But let me know what you think up in the right corner. Take a second and vote on which ship you think is the best. Also, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, both on this video and anything you'd like to see from the channel in the future. Anyway, as always guys, thank you so much for watching. May the Force be with you.